Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I am one of your co-hosts, Matt Bingel, with my pal, Marty Monster. Hello. And our other co-host, Chris Bixby, and our host, Jake Deffinbaugh. How you doing?
We're very good.
Doing great. How about you both?
Doing good. Wonderful.
Great to hear.
Nice. So who do we have today?
Today, we are very excited. We're going down Sesame Street again. Yeah. I don't know how many times we have, but every time it's worth it, and we're very excited because we have a former puppeteer. That's right, former. He is the former puppeteer of Ernie, started out in 2009 as the voice, officially taking over in 2014, until 2017 as Ernie. Here he is, Billy Barkhurst. Billy, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Thanks, everyone. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
to be here.
Happy to have you here. Now we know who you are, but for those who don't, would you care to introduce yourself?
Sure. I was cast in 2009, as you said, as Ernie's sort of official understudy performer.
Mhm.
I was Ernie's understudy for about 5 years. I primarily just did Ernie's vocal performances in a few Sesame Street live shows during that time. A little bit of puppeteering on the show, but not a whole lot. Mostly just recording as Ernie's voice, and then transitioned in 2014 to being Ernie's official full-time performer for 3 years until 2017.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. So can you talk about your background and how you grew up?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Honolulu. In 1983, and lived there until I was 7. And my dad's company had him relocate, so we relocated to a suburb of Dallas called Plano. Global headquarters of a whole bunch of corporations like Frito-Lay and Dr. Pepper 7-Up, JCPenney's, and those guys were just they were down the street from my house growing up. So it was a thing. That's how it was. So I lived in Plano, went to high school at Plano West Senior High School. Graduated. I wasn't really active in puppetry at that time, but I had a great love of animation, and followed classic animation and modern animation too, very closely. And then a couple of years after graduating high school, I kind of decided that I wanted to work in puppetry as a puppeteer. I had kind of rediscovered the Muppets in high school when I was about 15. And prior to that, I was sort of looking for this, opening where I might be able to work in the entertainment business doing really fun character performances. And so I was kind of interested in maybe looking at animation and voiceover, and kind of decided that I was pretty young, like 10 or 12 when I kind of had this thought. And I had it in the back of my mind, and as time went on, I kind of looked into it and tried to figure out how all that works exactly. And what I kind of discovered was that from the perspective of working conditions, I wasn't really all that enthusiastic about it, as it turned out. I love the idea of doing character performances, but I wasn't that crazy about a few different things. I wasn't that crazy about just being the vocal guy, not doing my own animation. I felt like that was missing out on a lot. I felt like I was missing out on working with other people, because you usually, or at least you very often, are recording by yourself. And I also kind of didn't really like the idea of just working in what usually is a cold, mostly dark recording booth. It just wasn't that fun to me. And so I kind of just put that on the back burner. I was like, I don't know about that. And then I just rediscovered the Muppets. My mom had taped The Great Muppet Caper off of the Disney Channel.
Oh, okay.
Many years ago. This is back in the 80s at some point, an old VHS tape.
So like when Disney Channel was like first, was getting started, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Very different back then. They were showing a lot of classic cartoons.
Right.
We had 2 full tapes of the Good Morning Mickey block.
Oh yeah, okay.
Big deal back then.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it goes back. So I just happened to pop in this tape that had The Great Muppet Caper in the first half, I think. And I think after that was Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, okay.
It was taped off.
Ooh,
Disney
nice.
Channel.
Nice.
Awesome.
And as I'm watching it, I'm like I'm hearing the voices. I'm like, this is obviously character performance, what I love. And as I'm watching the movie, it dawns on me that working like the Muppets probably do, I didn't know much about it, but working the way they do, it looked like there was a possibility to eliminate all of the things that I didn't like about about voiceover, or wasn't so crazy about in voiceover, but I could still do the same kind of thing with puppets. And so I just did a little research into the Muppets, and it was like, this is golden. This is exactly what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really take action on it right away, but when I was about 19, I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this seriously. I want to go really hard at this. I want to move to New York. I want to be a puppeteer, hopefully work with the Muppets. And so I just kind of ran from there. I moved to New York when I was 22. Kind of just started with Sesame. Actually started a few years for me after that.
Nice. Really nice.
Awesome.
Really
awesome.
nice. So I guess since I kind of answered the next question, how you first got into it. So getting into those fields, who were some of your inspirations?
Well, to go back to the voiceover part of it, I was a huge fan of Mel Blanc.
Oh yeah.
Basically,
definitely.
I just wanted to be Mel Blanc, basically.
It's funny.
As far as puppetry, obviously, Jim. But I was kind of naive. I didn't know that much about other puppeteers at that time. And I actually, in those early years, I actually did a lot of work, kind of just broadening my horizons and working in other styles of puppetry, marionettes, shadow puppets, all sorts of different styles, and kind of developed a real love for it. I've been a fan of the work of Bill Baird and Bert Tillstrom. Those 2 guys and Jim were basically like the trifecta of the 20th century, of American puppeteers, that is. And I went to one festival, I think in 2006, kind of living in New York, where you were able to meet other puppeteers, certainly, and be exposed to other things. So I kind of just became a fan more of the art, I guess, is the answer, than other going hot and heavy on other puppeteers other than Jim, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Nice. Before working on Sesame Street and the Muppets, did you grow up watching them or any of the other Muppet projects?
Oh yeah. I watched all of them. The big show for me was Fraggle Rock.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Love Fraggle Rock.
Still to this day. Yeah. I mean, it is. I think of Fraggle Rock as peak Jim. Which is kind of funny because he didn't really work on, other than coming up with the concept and occasionally directing and performing. He wasn't really hands-on with that show. But the essence of what he was Fraggle.
Yeah, I'm happy they brought it back too.
Yes.
Yes. And the first season is amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And the holiday special that's going to come out soon.
Yeah.
TV Plus.
Yeah. It's so cool that John Tartaglia is doing it too. He has such for that show. And if anyone was going to do it right, it would be him. I think he's a great guy.
I love John Tartaglia's work.
Yeah, we're big fans of his work as well, especially Play With Me Sesame and Johnny and the Sprites.
Johnny and the Sprites, Avenue Q for me as well.
Definitely.
Splashing Bubbles, lots of stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, cut back. So you want to ask this next one? Yes, but you're gonna have to lay down. Oh, fine. Oh God, here we go. He normally pushes me out of the way, but we're complete. We're never mind. Just ask the question. Hi, please. Okay. Growing up, did you have a favorite Sesame Street Muppet or human character?
Oh yeah, I mean my favorite Sesame character. I should say somebody else, but it was Ernie. It was always Ernie. I had a couple of Ernies that I carried around with me endlessly, and I just loved him. He's funny. Ernie is
Yeah.
funny. And
Oh,
funny
yeah.
Absolutely.
characters are so appealing, and those Bert and Ernie, they're the kings of comedy.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
All
They
all
are.
the all the performers have done such a great job with Ernie. You, of course, Jim and
You,
Steve, and
Jim,
now Peter.
Peter.
Yeah,
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 and John. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
definitely.
seriously. Do you have a favorite Sesame Street song?
Oh, that's hard. I one of my favorites. It's kind of a simple answer, but one of my favorites is Sing.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
Classic.
of
Yeah,
definitely.
course.
for sure. I got to sing that with as Ernie, Bird, Big Bird, and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
right.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
That's right.
That
that's right.
was that was the first major performance that I did with Ernie.
Oh wow.
I had
Wow.
I just started
Nice.
doing him full time like 2 weeks before then,
Wow.
and yeah, that was an amazing thing to do. That was my favorite part of that particular show.
Yeah.
'Cause you could really feel like everyone putting their all into that song, and you could sort of feel like you can't see the audience, of course, but you could sort of feel a connection to that performance. It was one of those kind of
For sure.
swelling kind of performances.
Definitely. I mean, for me, we've talked about favorite Sesame Street songs with most of our Sesame guests. Mine is probably "We Are All Earthlings."
Yes. Another great one.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a great one too. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely,
Great songs. So many to pick. Just only one.
How many?
definitely. So, can you talk about how you kind of began working for Sesame Street and the Muppets?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a story that had kind of a lot of stops and starts. Um, it's a little bit of a spilling the beans kind of story, but it actually began many years before I started doing Ernie officially, like full time in 2014. It actually began with an audition for Disney. About a year after they bought the Muppets, they did this open audition, which was something that they really never done before. The Muppets had never done it before with Jim or after Jim, and Disney's never done it again since. It really was kind of a one in a lifetime opportunity, where Disney decided that it was very controversial at the time too, because the Muppets didn't really do this. But they basically were looking for, they said that they were looking for people to sort of understudy or fill in as secondary performers for the main Muppet show, Muppets. And I had moved to New York when just like 3 months or so before this.
Oh,
I think this must have been 2005. Yeah, 2005. And I was aware that it was sort of this controversial thing, but I had mailed a VHS tape, demo tape to Kevin Clash at Sesame a couple of years before then, when they were still at the townhouse on E69th. And so his assistant had called me up and said, they're doing this audition and Kevin's going to be there. Be a good idea to go to this thing. So I went to it, and I had kind of had Kermit in my back pocket because I had rehearsed Ernie for years privately, but I had rehearsed Kermit probably more. I felt like there was more material, just more content to study with. And I felt at that time, at least, I felt a stronger connection with Kermit. And so I had done a lot of Kermit. So I kind of had that in my back pocket. And so I went in there, and it was it was a very busy day. They had about 80 people come in. So this was a true open audition. So any member of the public could come in and audition for Disney and Kevin Clash, who was he was really representing Sesame, but he was there kind of running the thing. And over the course of the morning, I guess it was, they had kind of whittled down everyone to about a dozen people. And they told us, okay, go to lunch, come back from lunch, and we're going to have you read for the characters. So there were about 12 of us, about a dozen of us who came back for lunch. And what they did was they took us one by one into the audition room, and we just read what they call copy, which is just a little like sample script. Mm-hmm. And they had a whole bunch of characters. I don't remember who all they had, but it was just scripts. There were no puppets. So I remember that I was like about in the middle of the group in terms of like, meaning like there were about 6 people in front of me, about 6 people behind me, because you just went randomly. Mm-hmm. And you go in one by one. So I'm seeing people go in, leave, and then come back in a few minutes later. And as people keep coming back in, I notice that they have this card that they're holding that I found out says something like, thank you very much for auditioning. We have a day 2 tomorrow. We'd like you to come back and audition again. So I'm seeing every single person come into this audition room one by one, and they're coming with a card. And I'm like, okay, well, it's my turn. So I go in there and I sit on the stool and I ask for, the Kermit script and I think maybe 1 or 2 others. And I think I did, relatively well. They look pretty happy. They look pleased. And the guy from Disney who was there, a guy named Jeff Conover, was sitting with Kevin behind the table. And they have between them is this stack of cards that I recognize as the cards they're giving out. So Jeff is like, "Oh, that's great. Thank you very much." And he reaches for a card, and then Kevin reaches over and stops him, and he just looks at him and says, "Workshop." And at that time, what I knew was that a workshop, for anyone listening who doesn't know, a workshop is basically a combination of training and audition for the Muppets. It's this thing you get invited to. It's literally a workshop, but it's also sort of a clandestine audition in a way.
Right.
So I'm kind of figuring, okay, that I know what that word means. I don't know why I'm not getting a card, but that word means something to me. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go back into the room and wait and see what they say. And so the other half of the group goes after me, and they all come back into the room one by one, and they all have a card. So at the end of this thing, I'm sitting there and I'm the only one in a room of 12 without a card. And I'm like, why don't I have a card? Am I not coming back? Well, the answer was, yes, I'm not coming back the next day. So I don't come back the next day. Everyone else does. But at the end of that day before I go, Kevin comes in and says, we at Sesame Street are going to have a workshop, a puppeteer workshop sometime soon. All of you are invited to this. So just hang tight and you'll hear from us at some point. So I figure, okay, well, I just moved to New York. I just did this Muppet thing. Maybe there will be a puppeteer workshop for Sesame someday. They didn't do that many workshops back then. So it was kind of a rare thing. So I was like, okay, well, maybe there will be one, or maybe there won't be. So I kind of just go back to doing my thing. And about a year later, lo and behold, there is a workshop for Sesame Street. And so I'm invited to that. It's like a week-long thing. And they have it, this was the first workshop they had done in like 10 years. Wow. So they do this workshop, and there's like, I think there's like 50 people there, which for a workshop, instead of an audition, that's a ton of people.
Oh yeah.
And we get through it. I think at the end of they told us because there were so many people that they were going to start letting people go after like the 3rd day. So, and then they would let more people go on Thursday, and then Friday they would have this group. And so they, and they also tell us that, by the way, if you're interested, we also would be interested in seeing what you might be able to do with some of the classic Sesame Street Muppets, which is kind of a surprising thing. They mentioned specifically Ernie, Bert, and Grover. And it said, if you're interested, let us know. Maybe there will be a chance to do something with those guys at the end. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So we go through this process, and there are so many people there that we end up, by the end of the 3rd day, I think all of us had been on camera maybe like 3 times, very, very briefly too, like for very brief scenes or just coming on and saying something and then going off. It was very brief. And so I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't really know about this. I don't know what's going to happen. And I get cut on the first day. So I don't even come close to anything with Ernie at all. I'm just let go along with the first group in that first day. And I had recently started working on another series unrelated to Sesame Street that had just started. It was another PBS series actually called Kid Fitness.
Oh.
And Kid Fitness was this show. It was actually the first PBS series to air in HD.
Wow.
They kept telling us this.
Oh.
Because HD was very new at the time, right? And so that was a gig. I ended up doing the lead puppet character and the co-lead on the show, and I ended up doing it for about 2 years. So I kind of just dove into that, and I was like, well, okay, maybe nothing is going to happen with Sesame, so okay, fine. So I just did Kid Fitness for 2 years, and then that ended, and about a year after that, out of the blue, I'm not sure really what came out of that workshop, if anything, but out of the blue, Sesame contacts me and says, we're holding a workshop for Ernie next week. Can you attend? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can be there. Yeah, let me like shuffle a few things around. I'll be there.
Yeah.
And so I go to New York, and it's at the offices in Lincoln Center. And unlike the Disney audition, which was 80 people, and the Sesame workshop, which was 50 people, this workshop was 4 people.
Wow.
Totally different. It was myself and 3 other people. And Eric was there doing Bert with 4 Ernies. So he did a lot of work. And Kevin was there, and Matt Vogel was there. I think he recently became Kevin's assistant puppet captain. And so we just worked for 3 days, just doing a lot of Ernie, a lot of scripts, a little improvising, I think, some singing. And then we kind of went away. And then about a month later, they called me and said, we would like you to be Ernie's understudy. Stand by, Kevin will give you a call. There will be, we have season 41 coming up. This was 2009. We have season 41 coming up. They'll call you in for some things. So he does. I work on just like 4 or 5 episodes. And then there kind of is nothing after that for 5 years, essentially, other than a few Sesame Street live recordings. And then I got in there in 2014 and started doing it full time.
Nice, really nice.
So, yeah.
So,
Amazing.
actually, it's Marty's question.
You can come back now. Oh, thank God. Which means I'm gonna pull you up. Oh, you got me by the throat, not the throat. Hey, that's better. Thank you. Oh, now you folks know what it's like. Yes. So what was it like meeting the? Here, I like it. Ow, don't. What was it like meeting all the other performers, cast, and crew for the first time?
Oh boy, very intimidating, and very, very much feeling like I didn't belong to be there. I didn't really belong there. Kind of reliving it right now, I guess. Because those guys were personal heroes too, for me. And so I was working with, Carol was still around at that time. He was actually still doing Big Bird and Oscar. He was still in both puppets. Jerry Nelson was around, and occasionally he wasn't puppeteering anymore, but he was still there.
Right, he was still doing the voice. Yeah,
he was still doing the voice.
Yeah. Frank Oz was not there.
I think that was around like when he officially kind of stopped doing the Sesame characters.
Yeah. And then the newer generation of folks who were also personal heroes of mine, people like Eric Jacobson, certainly. Eric was someone that I knew before I started with Sesame. And he was someone who was really in my corner and very supportive. through and through. So, having someone like that, be your partner in crime, who's also a personal hero was really an amazing thing. And Eric, it's a funny thing. Eric and I found out with Eric that he and I actually are kind of similar in some ways. We have there's some things about us that are similar and some things about us that are different. A little like Bert and Ernie.
That's funny.
It was just very interesting to know him for a long time. And so yeah.
Really nice. So now you mentioned a little bit performing there for the first time. Do you remember the first role you performed on Sesame Street on your first day?
Yeah, the very first thing that I did was I did one day of a special. This was during the economic downturn, Great Recession in 2008. So that had just happened, and we did this special with Al Roker, called I think it was called "Feeling Secure in Tough Times."
Okay.
And they had a Jerry Nelson anything Muppet. That Jerry, he didn't really play a part in this special. He was just sort of there at the top of the show, and they sort of just pan over him. He's playing guitar, and it's Jerry's voice, of course, and he's just kind of scatting. And I kind of just did the chords. I did the left hand doing the neck of the guitar, and that was it. It was very, very brief. It was just for one day. Most of those early days was spent watching. It was spent a lot of observing. Okay. Even when I was there full time, actually, I spent a lot of time observing because I was not really up to speed in terms of the nuts and bolts of doing puppetry at that level. That was sort of the other thing. When I was starting to do Ernie full time, I had the heavy responsibility of Ernie, but also the responsibility of learning how to do the show, which was very, very hard. They usually you're working for many years as a puppeteer before you get it. Traditionally, many years before you're getting a character, and I kind of just jumped in there and started doing Ernie, and it was intense.
Yeah, we know some folks who have done workshops for Sesame in the past. Yeah, wonderful, very intense. We hear, yeah, but wonderful people. So,
yeah,
yes, you ask it. Okay, so you had brought up, you had heard like nothing for like 5 years until 2014. But how did you inherit the role of Ernie?
How did I inherit the role of Ernie? Well, I don't know exactly. I think at that time what they told me was that they were looking for someone who could do Ernie more like Jim. Because Jim's voice was very unique.
Mm-hmm.
And and the way that he played all his characters, I guess, but Ernie and Kermit especially, those two guys were very much they seemed to be very accessible parts of Jim. And I think they were looking for someone who could play that essence. In my opinion, that essence is so critical to doing someone else's character like that. If you can land that, you can, a lot of other things are more forgivable. And a lot of other things are things you can work on. You can practice the voice, you can practice, you can take acting classes, you can practice trying to match the puppetry style. You can't really quite match being the right person for a part,
Right.
I'm thinking of Kevin Conroy, who just passed away.
Oh yeah, yes, that's right.
And he was my Batman. I grew up on Kevin's Batman, and he was so right. And it's more than the voice, it's so much more than a voice. And it took me time to learn that, because initially I was like, oh, let me just practice the voice and that'll be really good. And but it really is that core essence. And so that's that. I don't know if they were thinking this deeply about it. I've thought about it deeply because I've mulled it over for years and years. But yeah, they were looking for someone who could play Ernie a bit more like Jim. And I had been rehearsing Ernie and Kermit so much, and I think a part of me is similar to Jim in this way. And I've actually been told by people who knew Jim that when they would watch me do Ernie, there was a very similar aspect to me that was like watching Jim. Not that I was like him. I don't think my personality is like him, but there's a kind of a truth there that I think I brought to it. And so I think that kind of helped. I think that helped a great deal.
Nice, really nice.
Awesome. Overall, do you have a favorite Sesame Street or Muppets project you worked on?
You know, I would probably say the Mormon Tabernacle show. That was a really, I mean, what a great first experience to have. It was taped for TV, of course, but you were not really taping a TV show. You were taping a live stage show.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the nuts and bolts of learning how to do the Muppets for television, a lot of that stuff doesn't apply so much, or at least not quite in the same way when you're doing something like that. And so for someone who was brand new to it, it was a great way to kind of break the ice on something that was not as demanding of your technical knowledge. Mm-hmm. And you could really kind of just, and we had a lot of rehearsal time, and we did several shows, so we had time to kind of settle into it and find our place. And so on the performing side of it, there was that. The show itself was incredible. That performance space that they have, it's been so many years, I don't remember what they told us, but across all of the shows, there were a lot of people. They're like all together, probably like 30,000 people or maybe more.
Wow.
Across those shows. And to do all of that in front of a crowd like that and singing those great songs, like Sing, it was pretty special.
Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering, are you still able to do Ernie's voice?
Oh yeah. I don't practice it all that much. But yeah. Oh, hi there. This is Ernie. So yeah, it's there.
Oh, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
Oh, that's amazing. Now you had brought up a lot of people, and Sesame's been known for having a lot of celebrity guests over the years. But who are some of your favorite celebrity guests who have been on Sesame Street?
Oh my. Oh, geez. You mean like all time? Like throughout the history of the show?
Sure, we can.
Yeah, it could be throughout the history or during your time, or
yeah,
it could be throughout. Yeah, sure.
Geez. Oh my gosh, there's been so many.
Definitely.
Who sticks out? I'm not sure who sticks out. I know of the celebrities that I worked with. The one that I worked with the closest was Lucy Liu.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, she was. The episode was a Rosita show, and Lucy Liu was Rosita's fairy godmother.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
right.
There was this. They had this running gag where she would slip or otherwise fall out of frame, and one of her glass slippers would go. Or I guess it wasn't maybe a glass slipper, but what looked like a glass slipper just flying out of frame. And so I was basically kind of glued to her for the day as her slipper thrower. I would just try to time it to just get the slipper flying through at the right angle. And so I didn't spend a lot of time chatting with her, but I got to spend more time with her and talking with her than anyone else I worked with on the show. So that sticks out to me as kind of a special memory.
Yeah, I know one of the other things you did was you sang "I Don't Want to Live on the Moon" with Lennon and Maisie.
Yes. Yeah, that was I didn't really know who they were, honestly, at the time. But they kind of gave me the track, and Yeah, I mean, I Don't Want to Live on the Moon is one of my favorite Sesame songs. That's up there.
Great song.
Definitely.
And I kind of remember that being in the wrong key, if I recall.
I think I remember that too. Yeah, I was in a different key than the original.
Yeah, I think they were matching Lennon and Maisie's key, and I just had to kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, my vocal register is more at Jim's level, so
Yeah.
it was kind of hard. But I'm so glad I got to sing. That was the only time I sang it. Was for that. So
Wow.
glad I got to do it.
I got an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
So I know a little bit earlier you mentioned some of the things you've done with Ernie outside of the show. What was it like getting to do the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parades?
Oh, those are a lot of fun. Yeah, I did that. The first one I did was in 2009. It was season 41. That was the first time I actually did the Ernie puppet in front of any member of the public.
Wow.
Though for that, you don't really, a lot of people will come in and be in those different puppets. It's not necessarily the assigned performer.
Right.
And since I wasn't Ernie's official performer, my voice wasn't in the mix. It wasn't on that track.
Right.
But yeah, I got to lip sync along with it, and you're behind a scrim, so you're not really seeing, clearly out at the crowd. But when they go down, Broadway, and you're looking at the side streets, and you see people literally as far as you can see, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so yeah, I love doing those. Those are one of my favorite things to do. Actually,
yeah, I can tell.
Definitely, yeah.
And very soon another it's Thanksgiving Day parade.
Yeah, another parade coming soon. Yeah. Definitely.
Sure. Is there a Sesame Street Muppet that hasn't been used in a while that you wish would return or get used more?
Oh boy, let's see. Well, I like Don Music, and I know they started using him, so I can't say him.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He's now done by one of our previous guests, Ryan Dillon.
Yep. Previous guest.
Yeah.
Yes, Ryan Dillon. It was fun talking to him.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan's a super talented guy.
Yes.
Yeah. So besides Don Music, who do I remember? Have they brought back Frazzle?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think they brought him back. I
would say Frazzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I read online that they brought him back for some little thing years ago, and Joey Mazzarino did him, but ever since he left, they haven't done anything with Frazzle since then. So
yeah, I'd like to see him come back.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard to recast him, really. I mean, doesn't say much.
Yeah, when we spoke with Ryan, he said that he's been trying really hard to get Barkley to come back.
Yeah, and that's really one of my favorites ones to get back, the show. But of course, it's very hard to because of financial reasons and how big the costume is,
financial reasons,
how to rebuild the whole costume, and
he mentioned that the puppet kind of turned into toast.
Oh, okay. Oh wow.
Yeah, because I don't think they've had a lot of major changes with Barkley, so they've mostly used the same puppet. So I think Ryan mentioned that he kind of turned to toast, and he mentioned how it's very expensive to kind of refurbish, and
Oh yeah, he's a good one though. I remember him from the show. The show closing when I was growing up had a lot of Barkley. They would hide on either side of the street.
The kids.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Definitely. So, do you have any specific funny or interesting behind the scenes stories from your time working on Sesame or Muppets?
Ooh, behind the scenes. I, Boy, I'm not sure. I love doing the mannequin challenge.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That was a lot of fun. I remember we were trying to figure out what the payoff for that would be. And I had suggested, since they're not supposed to move and you don't see Bert's shoes, why not just have Ernie say to Bert, "Hey Bert, your shoe's untied." And he just looks down and it's like, "Oh, Bert, come on. You ruined it."
Oh, it's amazing.
So, and everyone did a great job on that. I was shocked to see all the things that they had done, all the things they had like. I think there's like papers that are sort of kind of like armature to look like they're spilling, like someone's like stepping and like spilling papers at an angle, And there were one or two other things like that that were like, that's pretty cool. They pulled this together really kind of seems kind of short notice. I came out of nowhere for me, but I thought it was really well done, and we did it on a lunch break too. Which is really, really, I mean, you have an hour, but it's really brief to pull off something like that in an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Especially with all those characters like that. That's tough to do. Oh, yeah. With all those.
Yeah, definitely.
Only an hour. Ooh.
Yeah.
But they did. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with anybody from Sesame Street or the Muppets?
I haven't spoken to anyone in a while, but I do check in with Laura McLean sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart. I love her, and I've worked with her, on other things besides Sesame. But yeah, honestly, I kind of have turned the page. I'm still a puppeteer, and I still am interested in puppetry. But when I was at Sesame, I started getting involved in acting, because acting was actually one of the things I needed to get better at. And what I found was that I love it just as much as puppetry. I kind of fell in love with dramatic acting. And so I'm kind of on a little bit of a break at the moment, but I kind of shifted gears and focused more on really kind of developing my depth as an actor, stage actor, and film actor.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm kind of focused on that. I'm kind of looking forward to hopefully writing. I don't know if I can actually write, but I'm going to try to write and act in and then direct my own content as an actor and as a puppeteer. That's kind of my goal for the next however many years.
Yeah. So awesome. So I do also want to ask. So since we talked about Sesame Street, did you get to work on anything with like the Disney Muppets?
I didn't. No. They had called me to work on Letters to Santa.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, great movie.
That was basically the closest I got. I was in Texas. I live in Austin. And I was in Texas at the time. They called me at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Like, can you do this tomorrow? I'm like, no, sorry, that's just not enough time. So no, I couldn't do it. But yeah, no, the that open audition, that was the only time I was really in front of the Disney folks. Just puppeteering in general. So yeah.
Okay. So do you have any Sesame Street or Muppets memorabilia or anything from your puppetry work with you that you like to show or you can tell?
Yeah, it's not easy to show, but a few things I can tell. I have the Mormon Tabernacle folks gave us a really nice departure gift, which was a large, beautiful wooden frame that includes a single photo of someone with their character, a large photo. I think it's the same photo they used for like the DVD cover, and a mounted copy of the program from the show. So I have that. I actually recently hung it on my wall. I had just been keeping it in the bubble wrap for some reason and decided, I should just take this out and hang it. So I just hung it up like a month ago. So that, and I have a I guess it would be a photo rubber ducky that I have. He doesn't. He's not screen used. He's like a hollowed out one that they would use for photos. I have him under glass. Yeah, I have him under glass.
Oh wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, so as a puppeteer, what would you say you've learned or taken the most from working alongside the other Sesame Street puppeteers?
Oh my goodness, that is almost impossible to answer. There are so many things. So many things. Working for Sesame is what has given me the confidence to look and to try to coordinate, try to produce and direct my own stuff. Hopefully right. Certainly perform and direct my own work, because you are, as a puppeteer, you really are wearing multiple hats at the same time. You're the actor. You are also crew. You are basically a director. You're kind of working in a way as an editor. You are working as a cinematographer, helping to frame the shot. You're doing all sorts of things below the frame that are the things that are very technical things that on most film or TV sets, the crew would worry about. The position of a monitor, for example. You can set up a monitor so you can see it. But what if another puppeteer going from A position to B position, and that B position is going to be blocking your monitor? What do you do then? That's just one example of like an infinite number of things that you just have to learn. Those are the nuts and bolts I was speaking of, that you have to learn through experience, really, and through doing it. And it's so many things. I can't really answer that. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine.
No worries.
I thought that was a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you could go back in time, is there a Sesame or a Muppets project you wish you would have had a chance to work on?
Oh boy. I have a special affinity for The Great Muppet Caper. Because it was
that movie.
It was that movie that really got me back into it, and it's my favorite Muppet movie.
Nice.
There's something about that. I love the original Muppet movie.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Great Muppet Caper has more of like a Hollywood polish to it. That
I think
it feels there's a certain appeal to it because of that, and the songs, the music by Joe Raposo. I'm a very big fan of film and TV music, film scores, TV scores, and his work in that movie is just superb. There's something really kind of, there's peak Muppets. There's something that's peak Muppets about that, and in a lot of ways, it really was literally the peak Muppets, because they did that like right at the end of the Muppet Show, and the Muppets really, I don't think they were ever really quite as huge as they were right then. Like that moment in time, they were just huge. And there's just something about what it seems like it would be to work on that movie, and it was directed by Jim too.
Right. Yeah.
So there's something about that. I would say Great Muppet Caper. Lending a hand to the Happiness Hotel number.
Yeah.
Would be one.
Love that.
Yeah. I'd say Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Such a wonderful movie. Out there's one of our favorites. Yep. So after your time on Sesame Street, you started working as a product and visual designer. Can you talk about what you do with that and how you began that?
Sure. I had basically I got into that because I also do graphic design on the side. It was something that I started as a kid, probably like around 15 also. Just initially starting in MS Paint, like you would do back then. and when you're 15 years old and it's 1998 or whatever, there's just not much.
Nice.
Not much tools.
Actually, it's cool that you mentioned graphic design, because when I was in high school, a couple of years ago, I actually took a couple of classes in graphic design and that whole kind of field. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
it's
fun.
a great way. It's a great way to be creative if you can't draw.
Definitely, yeah.
I just can't draw. But I have a desire to make great looking images. So computers are a great bridge to that.
Yeah.
So I started just doing graphic design, and that was just really just something I did on my own, like in my own free time. I didn't really like get a job doing that. But after Sesame ended, I went back to school, and I had talked to a counselor there, and I said to her, is there a job out there where I can make money, but also work as an artist?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, have you heard of UX design? I'm like, no, what is that? So UX is user experience. So it's basically, the way I describe it is that it's the art and science of designing experiences for apps or websites or even physical content like board games, so that people can use them easily and instinctively and fluidly. If you're ever on your phone, if you're on an app and something, you're just thinking to yourself, why doesn't this work right? Or shouldn't this do this instead of this other thing? People design that. And so the job of the UX designer is to try to get you to where you have a product or you have a service and you're not asking those questions, basically. And it's something that involves graphic design. It involves researching how people use things. It's a very human-based, in my opinion, it's a very human-based way to work. I think of it sort of like the way that an actor comes to a script and kind of has to deconstruct and walk back to get to the starting point. So too, can you be given a product or a service and you kind of have to figure out, okay, this is what it's going to do. This is what it's supposed to do. How do I figure out how people are going to use this from the very beginning? What's the user journey, they call it. So it's an artistic process, in my view. Sure. And in some ways, it's similar to my experience in acting and puppetry. And the things that I couldn't really describe that I learned working on Sesame, a lot of those things I fold in to UX design.
Okay.
So in some ways, I'm able to kind of continue doing work that way.
Nice.
And pay the bills.
Nice.
Just matters.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. So the next question was kind of answered. So Jake, why don't you take the next one? Yeah.
In general, do you have a favorite designing project you worked on?
Oh, that's hard to answer as well. I'm still basically a junior designer. Technically, for hiring purposes, I'm a junior designer. I haven't done a whole lot of projects like from beginning to end or taken like major ownership of projects. So that's a real hard question to answer. I don't really have a favorite. I'm still kind of learning very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
Okay.
Hey. So besides your career as a designer, can you share any other projects you're currently working on?
Oh boy. So I would love to, but I actually kind of don't have a whole lot at the moment. I'm kind of working on some story ideas actually, so that's an answer. I'm trying to figure out. I'm basically trying to figure out if I can write, if I can be a writer.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard, and I know that from my love of the Muppets, I know I'm trying to figure out how I can write in a way that really puts character front and center, a way that has character driving the story. Telling a story through character, basically. A lot of content now seems to tell story, and then the characters are kind of just along for the ride. Writing character, I think, is the secret. So I'm trying to figure out if I can do that. It's hard though.
Yeah, I understand.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as a puppeteer and designer, what challenges would you say you faced during your career?
Oh boy. In puppetry, well, um, probably, well, with Sesame, there were those two big things. There was like the nuts and bolts of learning to be a puppeteer on the show, and then there was also trying to get Ernie, trying to get familiar with Ernie, trying to find myself in Ernie. And it was hard because even after I was there full time, there weren't very many opportunities. Ernie was not used in a very substantial way, I'm sorry to say. And so I really didn't get to sink my teeth into a whole lot of content to really get where I wanted to be. But I wanted to get there, and the expectation would be that I would get there. So that was internally for me, that was a very challenging thing. And also kind of just developing as an actor. Early on, I focused a lot on puppetry technique to the detriment of acting. I kind of had to change my perspective a little bit on the importance of acting. And so that took work as well. So those items, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what piece of advice would you give to anyone who wants to get into puppeteering or designing?
For both of those things, I would say be an honest critic of your work. Be an honest evaluator of what works. Try to figure out why it works. If something doesn't work, try to discover why. Try to be specific. Try to have an opinion on things. Have something to bring to a conversation. Have something to offer when you're talking to other people.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's a very good piece of advice.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay, Marty, you can ask the question. Okay. So what would you like to say to the fans and supporters of your work and of Sesame Street and the Muppets?
Oh, yeah, I would say, we're all the puppeteers are fans of the show too. So in a way, it's like a self-reflection. I'm so glad that Jim did what he did. I'm working through the new Salmon Friends book.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of maybe it's easy to find on Amazon. It seems like somebody's having trouble getting it.
Yeah.
It's really well written, and it covers Jim's early experiences and some of the things that he worked on. And so like I'm sort of getting a charge out of that, really. And so like I almost feel like I'm the one who should be saying thanks to Jim for what he did. And if he hadn't done what he did, we wouldn't be talking. So I would say to everyone, thanks for loving the Muppets. I love the Muppets. I'm glad they're around. I'm glad they've meant what they have to people. Jim created a very specific kind of entertainment, really. That's really what he did. Everything in his day, everything was called the Muppets. It wasn't just like the Muppet Show Muppets. It was all Muppets. Muppet was like code for puppet show made by anything with puppets made by Jim Henson. And that wasn't just a certain level of technical quality. That was a specific view of how people should be in the world. And I am who I am because of that. And I always appreciate when I feel like I can recognize that in other people. So I guess I'm just grateful that they exist. That's my thanks.
Yeah. And it's cool that you mentioned the Salmon Friends book, because we actually had the guy who wrote it, Stephanie DeBruzzo's husband, Craig Shemin.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah. Craig's a great guy. I'm glad I had no idea that this book was coming, but when I heard about it, I was like, what a great idea.
Yeah.
And then my second thought was
Amazon, and now it's published on Jim Henson's birthday.
Yeah. And also Ryan Dillon had also mentioned that he was also a fan of Sesame Street. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Most of them were, yeah. Most of
them were.
Came in later on, yeah.
I mean, we are, yeah.
Yeah. Different guys did something for the book as well.
Yeah, I think Craig mentioned that Frank Oz did the forward for it.
He did the forward. Check out the book if you haven't yet. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's one of the books I'm definitely going to get if I have to.
Same here.
Good to do that. I feel that's probably a good question for Ernie as well. Would you like to say to your fans and supporters? All right, guys, you know what to do.
I knew you were going to do this.
What's the question? I'm sorry.
The same question that we already answered. Okay, what would you like to say to your fans and supporters?
I did Ernie only for a brief time officially and sort of full time. The audience for Sesame Street changes. People age, small children age out of that show so fast. But the time that I was doing Ernie, I probably was one generation's Ernie. There will be kids who grew up after Steve's Ernie, but before Peter's. And so it's my Ernie that they grew up on. Yeah. So I would say to them, I hope I did Jim proud. I hope I did the show proud.
Definitely.
I hope there's something recognizable in what I did.
Yeah.
Something true to Ernie and who Jim was.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people would like to contact you, where can people find you?
Boy, the only real way, I'm not really on social media. I probably, if things go well in the coming years, though, if I can start to get personal projects off the ground, that'll change. I probably would join Instagram, I would think. But I'm not on any social media. But my website, which is billybarkhurst.com, has a few pictures, behind the scene pictures with Ernie. Nice. But it's mostly a portfolio site for trying to get jobs. That's why it exists. But
description down below.
You can send me an email through that. That'll get to my email address through that.
Which is how we got you.
Nice. Hey. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So to kind of end this off, since we're close to wrapping up, so of course this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define nostalgia?
I would say that nostalgia is anything that makes you feel the way that you did when you watched that show before, when you were a kid.
Definitely.
Or when you looked at either a book or any kind of media, I guess, any kind of object, I suppose, that takes you back to that place when you were a kid. I would say that's nostalgia.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of nostalgia for me, I mean, really my introduction to puppetry was Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yeah,
amazing show. And now that show's on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, yeah.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, there were wonderful songs from that show.
Oh, yeah. We previously had some Bear people on, like
some of the composers. Tyler Bunch, Tyler Bunch.
And Brian Woodbury and Peter Lorre and Yerkes
and Noel. And I'll edit this part out, but we're having Noel on in the future as well.
Yep.
Noel McNeely's awesome.
Nice.
Nice. Well, Billy, it has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was great talking to you guys.
Yes. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I'm glad for us, knowing your work and
yeah,
I'm appreciating for being on, and thank you, and keep up your good work and see what's
I can't wait to see what's next in store.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. Yes, I hope I can come up with something good.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, speaking of stuff in store, we got some pretty big stuff in store. We're coming up to the last couple episodes of the year, folks. Yep.
Yes.
2022's almost done. We got some big stuff coming. I think we got, as of the time this airs, I think we only got one more episode and then something special the week after.
Yes.
Stay tuned for some big stuff in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
It's going to be fun.
Definitely. Yes, well, with that being said, that brings another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show to a close. We've absolutely enjoyed our time speaking with Billy Barkhurst.
Yes, thank you again, Billy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as always, guys, remember to keep nostalgia alive. We'll see you next time. Bye,
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.